Today I'm going to show you what's inside of this supercharged Nissan QR25 hybrid engine and how it works. That's right, this supercharged engine is out of my Pathfinder hybrid, which is a very strange combination. So let's tear this down to see how it works. So taking a look at how a supercharger is set up on this engine, we've got our air intake that's going to bring in fresh air that's filtered out from the air filter. It's then going to go inside of this body over here. There is a bypass that goes to a throttle body over there. Then looks like the air comes back through over here to another throttle body looking thing, and then to this air intake plenum at the top of the engine. The great thing is there's no extra plumbing or anything for cooling systems like an intercooler. The way a turbocharged engine does, everything's kind of compacted in this area. Looking at the rest of the setup, we do have metal valve covers. The engine mount, remember this is transversely mounted. There's 3 variable valve timing solenoids that go into our intake and exhaust camshafts. We also have no alternator because this is a hybrid. We've got our traditional water pump and our AC compressor down below. First thing I'm going to do is remove this hose here. Then I'll remove this bypass here. It's a 12. Get this piece off here. This just looks like a noise baffle. Now I can peel off this insulation. But this one here looks like a vacuum switching valve of some sort, maybe for the evap system. This is a manifold pressure sensor. Alright, so to unbolt the supercharger, there's 4 14mm bolts. Let's unhook this belt. 2 more bolts in this bracket. See if we can pull this supercharger. Now, can you believe this requires either removing the subframe or the whole engine if this is in the vehicle, because this whole thing is right up against the back firewall. You have some insulation padding, and that's for noise. You don't really want a hybrid winding up like a real supercharged engine, do you? Now what's left here is a relatively normal looking air intake. I'm just going to start removing the PCV hoses here. Alright, now we got the 12 there. I'll remove some brackets, ones that are attached to the head itself. Down this way there's a bracket. Even though this throttle body is so tiny, it's got 2 coolant hoses going to it. So I didn't realize on the front side of this thing, there's 2 coolant lines going to it. Maybe there's an intercooler. So let's see if we can get this cooling system off. It's a bunch of tens. Alright, so we got this cooling system full. Alright, I think I got all of the wiring and stuff and hoses out of the way. Clear this back. Okay, finally. So we'll take a look at the air intake system in a separate video. Continue with this teardown. As you can see, this is a port injected engine. This is where the fuel would go in, and you've got 4 injectors that go directly into the air stream of the intake of the engine. So you're not going to have any issues with carbon buildup. I'll continue along my wiring adventure and remove all the wiring harness from these fuel injectors. I gotta say, I know this engine is supercharged and hybrid, but the wire harness is clipped down in every single spot. I finally got it all out. Just make small repairs and taking things apart a lot more difficult with a lot more clips and stuff that could break. But hey, copper prices are up, so this could probably buy me dessert. Now this engine was working properly with 240,000 kilometers on it. This being a Nissan, of course, it was the transmission that totaled it out. Sneak peek on the transmission, you can see all this brown stuff is probably clutch material that was burnt up inside of this bell housing. Now I can take this apart like a normal engine. We got the engine mount bracket off with a bunch of 14s. Get the ignition coils out next. Whoa, that was a crazy amount of oil. This engine didn't run for like 5 months. Okay, this one was great. And this one's fine. So yeah, cylinder number 1, lots of oil in there. Now the valve cover in these are actually plastic. You'll see these are the 2 PCV valves over here. Let's just get this bracket off. I'm gonna start zipping valve cover bolts off. Get this bracket off here. That valve cover, pretty clean. Under the valve cover itself, pretty clean. It is made of plastic like all Nissans from this era. More importantly, under the hood of this QR25, it looks very well maintained, not too much tarnished, especially for 240,000 kilometers. It uses a double overhead cam design with a cam on bucket design that presses down directly on the valve. There's no roller rocker arms, VTEC or Valvetronic in the way. Very simple. As you'll see, the fuel system is very simple with port injection and 1 fuel rail that connects to the line. Moving along to the back of the engine, we have a giant contraption of a coolant manifold over here. Alright, by the way, this one does not have a real thermostat, it's just a spacer inside of here. Now this contraption's got lines going to the upper radiator hose, to the oil cooler at the back, to the heater hose, to the throttle body. 8 different hoses go into it, and it bolts to the head in 2 spots. Now continuing off the cooling system, this is the water pump hose that goes towards the thermostat area. I'm going to remove this water pump housing. These are 12s. This is our thermostat housing over here. This is where the lower radiator hose would connect to. Oh no! So this does have a real thermostat for 82 degrees Celsius. It's not a digital thermostat like you find in many newer hybrid vehicles. Alright, let's see if I can get this water pump off here. Got my Nissan specific water pump removal tool here. Ooh, it's not good. It made a mess everywhere. To keep the place clean, I got my daughter's really nice summer dress here. Just gonna wipe up the floor. On most hybrids, the water pump is actually electric. Look at this. We've got nice steel impeller with an aluminum housing and a steel pulley on here. Not really typical of hybrids because they tend to use electric water pumps nowadays, so they can better cater to the cooling capacity of the engine, but also the HVAC system. Because remember, when you're in hybrid mode, the engine isn't spinning and therefore the water pump isn't spinning, and you won't really get much heat in the car. I don't like the design of these crossover tubes, kind of old school. They could have integrated it better into the casting of the block. But hey, at least it's not plastic. Now this wire that's sticking off here is called a block heater. Basically is a heating element that you plug into a household outlet in the wall in the winter time, and it keeps your engine warm. Move it over to the front of the engine. Here's the top part of the timing cover over our dual overhead cams with our 3 variable valve timing solenoids. I'll go ahead and remove all the 10s holding this on. Taking a look at this piece here, you'll see we've got a hole that forms an oil galley behind this plate. We've also got our 3 solenoids over here. These 2 solenoids feed the intake side in the camshaft here, and this one feeds the exhaust side for its variable valve timing. Now there's holes inside of these phasers here that are going to fill up with oil and phase the cam timing for the intake and exhaust respectively. You can also see bits of the chain as well as the timing chain tensioner. Now this idler wheel is made of plastic. We'll just get this off. This is our tensioner. I gotta rotate this. I got enough clearance to get this 12 off. Relax it. Now I can get this 12 off. And we can take the whole tensioner off. This is just a spring-loaded unit. Next up, we'll get this AC compressor off here. These are a bunch of 12s. Gotta break this one free first. Woo! Let me know if you guys want to see a teardown of this AC compressor. Next, I'll get the harmonic balancer off. I already broke that free, don't worry. On these QR25s, this little bulge that sits out here is the oil pump, which means that there is a pickup tube that runs down into the oil pan, which also means that I can't get this timing cover off without removing the oil pan. So let's spin the engine over. So also hanging out in this area is the oil switch, the oil cooler, as well as the oil filter, which just sticks out like that. Had to remove that in order to get the engine out. Very simple oil cooler. Oil in, oil out. Coolant in, coolant out. And it exchanges its warmth. Alright, let's turn this over and make some mess. I'm gonna remove this oil pan. Old school steel, not plastic, not even aluminum. Even the bolts are rusty. I'm gonna use my oil pan removal tool here. So this oil pan, stamped steel, very simple, very clean on the inside as I expected. The top of the engine looked like it was pretty well maintained. There's a plastic pickup tube here with a screen inside. And of course the screen is nice and clean. Oh, there's a screen on this side too. Alright, next up I'm going to remove all the 12mm bolts that go around this upper oil pan piece here. Alright, now I'm going to remove this upper oil pan with my oil pan removal tool. There we go. Now taking a look at this part of the oil pan, you'll see this is our inlet and outlet for the oil filter that sat over here. And this is another oil galley that runs over to the top of the block over here, and that all comes from the oil pump located at the front inside this timing chain housing. So let's work on the timing chain cover next. There's a little plastic gasket here. Here's a sneak peek at the balancer assembly that's also on off of a timing chain. With the engine back up to the top, just gonna slack up these variable valve timing bolts. Alright, next up we got these 12 mils. Then we have these 10 mils going all the way around for the timing cover. The rest of the bolts out from the timing cover at the bottom. Now my timing cover removal tool here. Pull off this timing cover. Behold the oil pump, which is integrated into the timing cover. Now this is direct drive right off the crankshaft, so you don't have any extra chains or anything. Our oil pickup tube would bring oil into here. It'll then push it back out to here, get filtered out, bring it back in here, and then output it to the block. And this would be our oil pressure regulator. Taking out the timing chain setup here, we've got our intake and exhaust directly driven off of the crankshaft with 2 plastic timing slides and a hydraulic tensioner. So let's remove this tensioner. Oh, that was easy. Looking at the timing chain tensioner, it is a ratcheting style, which is great because it won't push back on itself if you lose oil pressure. The oil is going to enter over here to push out that piston through this cavity in the block. Gonna have to call a break because it's getting really loud and dark with the rain. Let's take off this plastic timing chain slide. Gotta say, these timing chain slides look in really good shape. Is there any tension? Oh, there is. Nice small lightweight timing chain. And we can rip off these guys, which were what, 17s I think? If you want to learn more about how variable valve timing works, check my link above. Moving back towards the top of the engine here, we've got our cam caps as well as this little tower here. Let's remove all the 10mm bolts. That's air from 2013 when this thing was made. This tower has the cam sensors, which is always a sore spot for Nissans. Here's our cam sensors. Cam caps look in decent shape. Got this camshaft here. Exhaust camshaft looks great. And the intake camshaft looks great as well. Alright, the head bolts on this are eTorx 20. Do the extender rod on this guy for sure. Alright, let's remove this head. Well, inside of the engine is, as expected, quite clean, especially inside the oil galleries. The cooling system doesn't have any crusties. Now, one thing I don't like with these QR25s is that they've got the slit in between the cylinders. That allows coolant to exchange over to the other side so that it doesn't have a hot spot in between these cylinders. But it also reduces the amount of sealing area you have for the combustion with the head gasket to hold by half. As a result, Honda and Ford has learned their lesson the hard way and they're blowing head gaskets left and right because of this design. Now this engine's got some super thick walls on the outside here and lots of space for coolant to flow around it. Even though this is a supercharged engine, it should be relatively low stress because you do have boost coming from the electric motor in the hybrid transmission. Alright, now it's time to turn this engine over so we can take a look at the bottom end. We've got a chain driven balancer assembly over here to help keep down the vibrations. This is the oil dipstick, so this would be the high mark of roughly where the oil would be. Let's just loosen off this 14 here. We've got 2 10s for its own dedicated tensioner. Alright, so this is just like the other tensioner. It's got an oil port over here. Unlike the timing chain tensioner, this one is not hydraulically fed. However, it does have a ratcheting mechanism on the inside there, which I like to see. Just going to remove this chain slide here. Then I can unscrew this pulley, pop off this chain, and of course this is our timing gear for the crankshaft. It's supposed to just slide off. There's the timing gear. Next I'll slack off all the eTorx 14 bolts that hold this balancer assembly to the block. Damn, these are on there. Alright, I don't trust my ratchet on this, so I'm going to have to use a breaker bar. Alright, I got the breaker bar on there. Let me just wipe this with my daughter's shirt here to show you something. These bolt heads only have 3 tabs on them instead of 6 tabs like a regular eTorx. It's some kind of security feature to keep this whole thing together. Meanwhile, just over here they use a regular 14 or 12. I hammered a 10mm socket on there. Let's see if we can crack it loose. Alright, let's loosen these up. Really long, slender bolts here. Try this up here. Okay, we'll take a look at this later in the video. Now the block itself actually has 2 halves. There's the lower half over here, which has this ladder frame design and integrates the main bearings. And of course there's the block at the top. These are all held in by mostly 12mm bolts going around. This thing is built strong. The main cap bolts on these are eTorx 14. Go ahead and zip those off. I'm going to give this a tap with my oil pan removal tool here. I missed the bolt here. Maybe it'll be easier now. Alright, let's pull this off. Usually a lot of 4-cylinders might make this piece the upper oil pan, but they've chosen to go with like a 2-piece upper oil pan. Nice strong ladder frame design with only 2 bolts per main, but you got everything else bolted all the way around. It's a pretty strong, decent design. In this application, I don't expect overstressing. This one looks a little bit dark. Let's check out the bearing for that. Alright, let's take a look at the bearings on the bottom end of this engine. Bearings look clean. Those are the main bearings, nice and clean. Alright, next up we got to remove these connecting rod caps here. These are 10mm 12-point sockets. Pull these off. Again, if you told me this was a low mileage engine, I'd probably believe you, but for 240,000 kilometers, these are damn good. Sometimes you kind of regret parting out the rest of the car because of how good this engine looks inside. Just take off this pressed in rear main seal. Pull up the crankshaft. This is the crank position sensor for the trigger wheel that sat here. I'm going to go ahead and push these pistons out. Right off the bat, I noticed the tarnishing is kind of weird on one side of the piston head, while the other side of the piston head and the underneath of them are actually pretty clean. Except cylinder 1, which is more tarnished than the others. That was the one that had the ignition coil that was coated in oil, but I don't think that has anything to do with it. However, if we take a look at these piston rings here, you'll see the oil control ring, which is this bottom corrugated section here. It's very small, and that's normal for these modern engines. However, there is a lot of carbon built up in between there, and that's not good because as this piston is coming down, it's trying to scrape some oil back through that ring there, but it's all clogged up with carbon. and then it ends up burning oil. So I wouldn't be surprised if this engine actually consumed a bit of oil, despite how clean it is on the inside. Compression rings look great, normal color on the top of the piston, and the piston's got a bit of weight to it, not too heavy. It is a large 4-cylinder engine after all. Let's take a quick look at the oil lubrication system on this engine. Oil is going to be drawn up through this filter screen over here to this pickup tube, and then be sent down into the upper oil pan. It's then going to send oil up into the timing cover, which has the oil pump. That's going to then send oil in and out to the oil filter, which sits at the top here. Note this upper oil pan is a structural piece, as we've got an engine mount here. The timing cover's got an integrated oil pump where we've got the inlet over here. It's going to be pressurized and then sent out to the oil filter. Filtered oil is then going to pass back through the timing cover, which I don't really see a point of because there's more interfaces for it to leak before it goes into the block. That filter oil is then going to be sent through this huge oil galley that runs along the length of the block. Crap, I actually lost my toothbrush in there. That oil galley that runs along the length also powers these oil sprayers, which are going to spray the cylinder walls with oil to help lubricate and cool them down. And then the crankshaft is lubricated through this hole, which is drilled down into that oil gallery. Now the upper connecting rod bearing's got this little hole over here, and that's going to take some oil and spray it out this little sprayer over here. That sprayer is also going to spray this piston head and cool it down. Remember, there's a balance shaft assembly that sits here, so there's also lubrication for it. Now let's see if I can get this out of here. Perfect. Now from that main oil gallery, we've got 2 galleries that go up here to feed the head, and that's going to correspond to these 2 holes here on the head gasket. Looks like the exhaust valves were starting to burn up as they get that white stuff. Take a quick look at this head gasket here and see. Here you can clearly see how small the sealing surface is for combustion, with that slit in between for coolant. Now some of that oil is going to come up to the timing chain tensioner, and then over here where it goes into that variable valve timing cover that sat over here to feed the VVT system. However, in order to lubricate the camshafts, you need to have some more oil, which you can see there's a steel ball pressed into here where it was drilled in to correspond to this hole over here and this hole on this side, as well as this hole on this side over here. Now when we got the camshaft sitting here, you'll see that the cam cap that goes over here is going to provide fluid to lubricate this, but there's also a hole inside of the camshaft here. That means the camshaft is hollow and it's going to carry oil to the next bearing and the next bearing and the next bearing, therefore lubricating and cooling your camshaft. Do you notice how clean it is behind those valves? That's because you got gasoline spraying right into the intake stream through here, so it cleans off the back of those valves from your PCV system that keeps dumping oil in. And that's why port injection is good for the health of your engine in the long term, unlike direct injection, which would have the injector inside the combustion area over here. Now as to why that ignition coil was full of oil, I suspect it's because of the spark plug tube seal. But if you look at the design of the tube seal, it goes around this whole way. You can't really easily press them in and out because it's under this lip and sort of molded into the valve cover, so that means you'd have to change the whole valve cover. Let's see if there's an easy way to get this out. So there's the rubber part of the seal, and it's vulcanized to this piece of plastic, which in turn is glued to the valve cover. So this is basically a full valve cover replacement once you're in here. Alright, for the 10 of you who are still watching, let's open up this balancer assembly just for fun. Ah! Splashed oil on my face and glasses and everything. So this is the input coming from the timing chain. See, we've got 2 big gears over here, and then this has to be timed properly. You've got 2 half moon weights over here on each side, and these are there to counter the forces in the opposite direction coming from the crankshaft so that it reduces vibration. Now this will consume a little bit of power, so people who are modifying these often remove them. Now just like your crankshaft, these balance shafts needs to be lubricated, and you've got these little bearings that sit inside of here. Now this assembly is going to draw oil from the block through this hole over here and come up to this side where you'll see there's tracks that run along underneath those bearing surfaces to go to each bearing respectively. And let's look at the supercharged QR25 engine and how it works. I've torn these engines down before, and I can say they're very robustly and solidly built from the crankshaft to the bottom pan and all throughout. This one was actually very well maintained. Now being supercharged really didn't change much in the design with the exception of the cooling system and intake. Share, like, and subscribe.